record a podcast, gentlemen.
Okay. Oh, shit. Guess what I have to do?
You got this? Son of
like clockwork. Hey everybody, welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on cultural news and politics, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to resist the mono-narrative and cut through media misdirection. My name is Joe Sheehan. I'm here with my esteemed co-host David Rand, Kyle Mack, Bennett on the buttons, and we have a special guest, our friend and fan Emily, sitting in the back watching the show. How are you guys doing today?
Do not come.
What?
Little off time on that one. Doing pretty good, Joe. Doing pretty good. Thank you, Bennett, for that great opening.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. You really killed the mood, dude.
Kind of retarded.
Yeah, that's for sure. David, what are we talking about today?
Well, Ukraine is been invited to join the He-Man Russia Haters Club, aka NATO.
Sick.
Yeah, with some new statements from our esteemed Secretary of State. God comes out against DEI. So,
that's a deep one. I was like, where are you going with that? I see what you.
And then
we'll get to it.
Israel's worldwide support for their actions in Gaza has fallen off a cliff. That's not a joke. It's just a terrible tragedy going on there. So we're going to end on a nice low note.
We'll get to that one last, and we'll warn you before.
And then we'll pick it back up again with maybe some conspiracy talk at the very end of some interesting things.
Is CERN summoning in demons? I don't know.
Is there going
to be? We'll get into CERN, I guess.
Yeah. But before we do all that, thank you to all of our supporting members. Come look at and see how you can support us at humanreactionpod.com. It's in the show notes below, all of our links for everything. And also thank you to our new member, Wiz. And please like and subscribe on whichever channel, Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, wherever you're looking at us from, and hit the notification bell on YouTube to make sure that you're seeing us when we pop up on your feed, because sometimes it doesn't get shot into your subscriber area, and this will be the best way to actually see it.
And we're doing live shows now, so you'll get the notifications for those when we go live, like we did on Wednesday with our friend Adam Thuen.
Which was a wild time. It was very fun.
It was rowdy.
And it was, an after hours type of podcast where we were much less scripted and,
Indeed.
It's kind of wild.
We're never that scripted, but we were off the chain.
Our notes were just like nonsense.
Yeah.
Like we normally have like notes to think about things, and it's fairly structured here.
I'll usually write a few jokes. In this case, the jokes were the notes.
Yeah.
And we didn't even look at them.
Yeah, right. Barely.
Just crumbled them up and throw them away.
Yeah.
And also we're 5 subscribers from 900 on YouTube. So we had a nice little bump here recently. So help us to get to 1,000. And that's everything.
Great.
Oh, and also join our Discord, because we have a lot of interesting conversations. Our boy Adam goes off in there. But also we have dope memes and stuff that your brother, Sam, provides for us. And right here we have a giant ship, Russian forces, and then the Ukrainian front line trying to
push them.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't make sense to you because you're only listening, well, you should go watch it on YouTube, and you should subscribe while you're there.
But it also puts us into our first topic, what is going on with Ukraine and NATO here, Dave?
Do you want to see Blinken it with... I don't know. Who's he with at this point?
This is the Ukrainian
NATO chief guy.
This is the Ukrainian foreign minister.
Oh, okay.
I believe. But yeah, here is updates on what's happening.
Ukraine, the determination of every country represented here at NATO remains rock solid. We will do everything that we can. Allies will do everything that they can to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to continue to deal with Russia's ongoing aggression against Ukraine, an aggression that gets worse with every passing
This aggression will not
day.
stand, man.
Ukraine will become a member of NATO. Our purpose at the summit is to help build a bridge to that membership and to create a clear pathway
Hopefully an
for
oil tanker doesn't
Ukraine moving forward.
But of course, we believe that Ukraine deserves to be a member of NATO, and that this should happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So
Great.
let's return to what the hell is NATO?
Yeah, what is NATO, David?
It's a defensive alliance against the Soviet Union.
Why would anyone deserve to join? It's a word. It's a strange word, deserve.
Yeah.
It seems like to me you would deserve to join as if you provided some service to the NATO. What service has Ukraine provided?
Money laundering
Strategery.
operations.
Strategery.
Seems like they've been a pretty good host state for a proxy war with Russia so far.
Good for NATO, bad for an entire generation of Ukrainians who have been sacrificed on the altar of degrading the Russian military capability. And that's the real tragedy here is you got this guy, and I'm sure what he sees himself as doing is trying to guarantee the future security of a state from Russian invasion. And he's this might be the only play they have at this point because they've been so bent over the barrel by NATO over the last 10 years, setting up to this moment. But don't forget, the casus belli, the reason for the invasion from Russia, as much as you can go back to the first century to start charting the history of interrelationships between the Ukrainian area now and the Russians and all that stuff, is that Putin did not want NATO in Ukraine or Ukraine in NATO. Couldn't have those two things. And we consistently didn't listen to him, and the U.S. government and NATO consistently pushed to make that happen, despite repeated warnings from our own State Department. We have the "Niet means Niet" memo, which said, hey, no means no if you don't speak Russian, which obviously I do, right?
I think if you speak any Russian, you know Niet.
If you watch any movies in the 90s that had a villain, you know what Niet means. Anyways.
Anybody who's watched James Bond. Yeah.
So in that memo, it basically said, hey, I talked to everybody and no one supports this. This is the reddest of red lines. Sent to Hillary Clinton. What'd they do? They said, maybe you won't be a member state, but we're going to put Ukraine won't necessarily go into NATO, but NATO will go into Ukraine with military interoperability, all that kind of stuff, right on the border of Russia. And we're going to do this because that's the right thing to do because Russia bad.
Yeah. So obviously this is the reddest of red lines, and yet we are, seem like we're proceeding to just cross it. So where does this put us?
And the question is, what does this put us when it comes to peace?
Precisely.
Right? With the spring offensive didn't work. They didn't move a darn thing. Russians can stay where they're at forever. The Russian economy isn't collapsing like everyone predicted it would. All of the predictions of Ukrainian success, which there were substantial amounts going all the way into the summer of last year, late summer of last year, the spring offensive this year, the spring offensive of last year. And we're basically sitting at a stalemate. So what are we going to do to get to peace? Well, people are still dying in the stalemate, right? It's not like they're just sitting there watching each other. People are still dying. And you're going to say, oh, the one thing that made this conflict happen in the first place, we're just going to do that anyways. Is the goal to have a perpetual war? It's a great way to have it.
Well, I mean, it seems like since Afghanistan is over, we need a new perpetual war to keep the military-industrial complex well-funded. Mm-hmm. So this must be the one.
All right. I mean, we already have another perpetual war. We've been fighting since the 1940s.
Which one's that?
Korea. We are still at war in Korea.
We actually declared that war, though, didn't we?
Yeah. Well, no, it's a peacekeeping operation.
Was it?
Yeah.
No, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was World War II, I think, was the last declared war.
Talk about stalemate. I mean, that one's pretty much just not moved for how long now?
Yeah, right.
Decades.
But
decades.
it does legitimate expenditures, right? We got to keep troops in South Korea. Maybe that's a good idea at this point. I don't know. I mean, that's a strategic question. But great citizen of the world once said, who happens to be in prison right now by the State Department in an Ecuadorian embassy, said the goal is not to win wars, is to fight them forever. And this could be the goal. So we have a great tweet from Martyr Made, which is an excellent podcast. Check out his stuff on Epstein, by the way. I've been listening to that. It is, great. Really great researcher.
He says the idea that bringing a country at war into NATO obligates us to join the war is transparently silly. NATO countries will never go to war with Russia to defend Ukraine because at the end of the day, they don't care about Ukraine at all. Dangling membership is just another cynical ploy to get Ukraine to send another few 100,000 men to pointless deaths.
Yep, that's that.
It does feel to me like it's like all the pieces are being set right now for a much larger conflict, or like everything that's happening with Iran, the Israel stuff with like Syria, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later. Mm-hmm. this happening with Ukraine and bringing them into the alliance, it's just like all these pieces are being laid out in front of us right now. And it just is going to take that one spark. It's going to be like a Franz Ferdinand moment or something that all of a sudden just kicks everything off.
Well, like an eclipse.
Like an eclipse and a plague of locusts and CERN summoning in the interdimensional
That's
demons.
when it all happens. Okay, so
It's all coming
last
together.
year we had a new treaty between Russia and Iran. This year we have a new treaty between Russia and China. So you have a Russia, China, Iran like coalition, like an axis, right? And then you'll have the allies, which are like the West and NATO versus those axis powers, including Israel being kind of like one of the fulcrum points of the whole thing. And perhaps red heifers, who knows? So the
Passover
we draft
sacrifice.
the heifers. Additionally, what's interesting about this is Sweden was introduced to NATO, and we have a very interesting theory from the Gray Zone about this, because for a very long time it was said, I mean, beyond the fact that Sweden is right on the border of Russia as well, that they were kind of in the running, but never, it was too controversial. Well, we're pretty much fighting a war, Cold War right now with Russia. And so why not bring them in? That's pretty straightforward. But one of the things, they brought in a Swedish engineer named Eric Anderson, who suggests a very interesting theory, which is that they helped, one of the reasons why they get brought into NATO is beyond the strategic leverage point, beyond what they bring to the membership, and they actually have like a functioning society and military capability of some sort, is that they helped cover up the Nord Stream pipeline investigation. Oh man, yeah. Let's not talk about that. We're going to get canceled for the last one with Kyle. We don't have to talk about that. So, but
Pause to read. Pause to read.
Sorry. Yeah. If you're not watching the video, he pointed at a thing on the.
There's popular stories on the side that I just was like,
don't.
Yeah. Anyway, so he suggests that Sweden. Okay, so this is what happened. Nord Stream happens, right? Sweden says, It's in the Baltics. We have jurisdictions. They go to the site to investigate. They gather evidence. They decide not to declare it an act of environmental terrorism, interestingly, because it's kind of suggested that was kind of like their reasoning for doing it. And then they leave the investigation saying that they never actually had jurisdiction. And then question mark, they get it included into NATO. So he's like, this is a very strange set of circumstances that my country did. Like, why did we do this? Why wouldn't we declare it an environmental act of terrorism? It is the biggest act of industrial sabotage, resulting in the greatest expulsion of CO2 gases ever. Why wouldn't we do
like a man-made source?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because like Mount St. Helens put out more CO2 than like.
Yeah, maybe I didn't construct that sentence right. It's the biggest act of industrial sabotage resulting in this, right? So it's the industrial sabotage. That's the important part.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but it's important to note that the Der Spiegel investigation still is ongoing. They referenced it several times, but there's no new there. And if you want to know more about that, check out our former episode where we dived into it and I gave a big explanation of what they found so far.
So do we think, is there a timeline for when Ukraine gets added to NATO, or is this just sort of a continuation of the carrot and stick thing of, we're just going to threaten that we're going to do it. We're saying we're going to do it, but we're not going to tell you when.
Right. Yeah, so it's like Sweden happened, has been talked about for some time, and it kind of was like slow, real quick. So I don't know how it'll happen for them. It seems to me to be, it could be bartering, right? They know that NATO is a red line for Russia. They want to go into the negotiations for peace with a firm as red line as possible, saying like, we're going to bring them into NATO. It's like, oh man, it's going to be really hard for us to walk this back. So you better give, it could be
a negotiating tactic.
Yeah. A negotiating tactic.
Well, it is, because I remember when all this war kicked off, wasn't there a time where Kamala Harris, that she was like hot mic'd or saying something like, we want Ukraine to enter NATO. Wasn't that a thing that happened? Or am I making that up?
I don't remember a hot mic situation.
Or it might have just been like a speech.
No.
Right?
We were straight up invited them into NATO several times throughout their 2000s. Yes. They were on like the list of like
but
countries
now,
who just have to do the right things, like reduce corruption and do these things, and then they can get invited.
But now this is just the Secretary of State just saying we will do it,
Yeah,
right? Like
basically.
before, it's always been kind of like we want it, we're inviting them, all this stuff. Like, and it's much more like a negotiation thing. Where now it's just we will do it, right? Which is different language from what I'm used to hearing on this, right?
Sure. Yeah, that's why it seems so substantial.
Yeah.
But noting the times and noting who we're talking to, noting how, do they want a multi-front war with Iran and Russia at the same time, or is it far more profitable and less of a problem for any individual's career, including Biden's, if it's just proxy wars? I don't know. It seems more likely that they would prefer to fight a single front, right? Which would be, in this case, Israel is the much bigger focus for these guys.
Yeah.
If what happened last week with Iran escalates into a regional thing.
Empires tend to not be fond of fighting on just a single front. That tends to be something that they do that ends up being an overexpansion, right?
Well, I'm curious, do we actually have any substantiation of the claim that there are peace talks going on? Because I mean, it seemed like there were intentions towards that months ago, and then there was really nothing on that topic. Are we progressing towards peace talks in Russia?
I haven't heard anything. It's one of those things that I think everyone is, why it seems like they must be happening is that everyone's kind of like, nothing is moving. So what are we doing this for? Mm-hmm. And I can understand that. And there were some other stuff, like various different important individuals have said, this isn't working and it's not moving.
So the sentiment is continuing to shift away from support of this war.
And they can't let that happen because then the money train stops, right? That's why you had like the CIA basically starts working with the New York Times to write a post about how great all their operations are in Ukraine. Remember that? We talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. So those sorts of like news stories get spiked in order to try to gin up and try to push Congress to push through more spending. And there was Marjorie Taylor Greene was on with Tucker Carlson this last week talking about how Speaker Johnson betrayed the Republican caucus to get Ukraine's funding going again.
Let's talk about that because just really briefly, I mean, it seemed like he was such a bright spot for a moment, replacing Kevin McCarthy as Speaker, and he was going to be this principled guy. And now he's kind of in the hot seat.
I don't know enough about it. I didn't. It's a busy week for me this week. I didn't actually get on top of what is in fact going on there.
She was also on the Kevin McCarthy side during that fight, though.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So she might just be sort of leveraging this as a "ha, told you so" kind of thing.
But you also have people like Thomas Massey has said that Kevin McCarthy was much easier to work with, and he was more on that side too. And he, in my opinion, is the best congressman.
But he also was one of the guys with Marjorie Taylor Greene who didn't try to stick it out for a better speaker.
Well,
and
Marjorie Taylor Greene was a bit
committee
different.
assignment.
Like there was kind of the famous moment of her trying to hand the phone call over to Matt Rosendale, right?
Sure.
And that was kind of like a viral image that happened. Like my understanding of that situation is she was much more on the McCarthy side, which was surprising to me because it was like Lauren Boebert, who's kind of like her counterpart in the space that's kind of like very similar to her, was one of the major holdouts. Like there was a division that existed there. And it always seemed like she was much more on the McCarthy side.
No, you're right about that. Right. What I'm saying is like her and Massey both traded Kevin McCarthy's support for better committee assignments and actual roles in committees.
Yeah.
So this is what happens. Yeah. That's how speakers work.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where like she's going to have all these gripes, but I think that she has always kind of had that.
That said,
right.
there's stuff going on there, and there's some late night funding. There's a CR coming, probably an omnibus later. Like the government's going to run out of money soon. We're going to be back in that spending conversation here in the next couple of weeks again.
Sweet.
Yeah, I don't want to do it, but it's what we got to do.
And the last one, right, was passed at the 11th hour, and it was so huge, and no one could read it. I mean, classic Washington, right?
Oh yeah. Includes what was it? The thing that got the most coverage was like funding for a gay nightclub or something like that.
Oh, really?
Like a public gay night. I don't know.
A Republican gay nightclub?
Yes, of course. It has to be
great.
Yeah,
perfect.
Then the Republicans are in charge first, right?
If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thuen at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success, from grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management. Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL patriots.com. This episode is brought to you by Revved Up Promo, the official apparel partner of Human Reaction. Revved Up is a premier full-service shop specializing in laser engraving, screen printing, and embroidery. Not only are they now making all of our apparel right down the road from us, they can do the same for your brand and ship it to you anywhere in the world. Revved Up helps you navigate the extensive universe of merch options and uses state-of-the-art techniques to showcase your brand in its very best light. So if you want to support our show and our generous sponsor, you can now do so by buying our merch and by turning to Revved Up Promo for your own custom apparel needs. Reach them at revveduppromo.com. That's with 2 V's and 2 P's, or just check the show notes for a link.
All right. Well, that would be the most DEI-friendly thing the Republicans have ever done.
Oh, the transition.
Don't call
God
it out. It was so
hates
natural.
DEI.
It was so
You're right.
natural.
Well,
They
that's
had to
because
call me
God
out.
is against DEI now. Now the transmission. Jesus.
I'm just calling it as I see it. So we had Charlemagne the God on the Daily Show, guest hosting, I guess, and he was kind of calling out DEI from a left-wing perspective. He was kind of calling out DEI. It's kind of a wishy-washy thing, but it is one of those things where I think it signals probably the peak of this, where even the people that are on the left are not really supporting it anymore, or at least there's kind of like an incentive to go against supporting it, it seems like. So here is Charlemagne the God talking on this.
DEI. It means more fair hiring policies, new anti-discrimination rules for the workplace, and sensitivity training seminars. And the first thing it led to was a shitload of ads.
Real progress on diversity and inclusion doesn't happen without real work.
Say Celebrate Diversity into your X1 voice remote to discover curated content today.
Every day, General Mills serves the world by making food people love. And inclusion is one of our secret ingredients.
At Kraft Heinz, our purpose is to make life delicious. And we believe we can't achieve that without one essential ingredient: diversity. It's diversity that makes life delicious.
We're on a 400-year-long journey, and scars don't fade. But neither does hope.
Ask your doctor if black people are right for you. That's right. Nobody's buying Vaseline because of diversity. Come to think of it, I don't think I've ever actually bought Vaseline. It's just there. Like, it comes with the house. Right? So that's how things stood in 2020, but that was like 15 years ago. Today, when people talk about DEI, it's more likely to sound like this.
DEI is just a rebranded version of hating white people.
DEI, in this case, stands for divisive, erroneous, and insidious.
DEI, which stands for didn't earn it.
Discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination.
DEI. DEI stands for Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, and Ice Cube.
Nice, well played.
Yeah. Y'all cheering out there, but do you want with attitude coming to your office? These right-wingers are crazy, right? Jesus. But here's the part where you all stop applauding everything I say. The truth about DEI is that although it's well-intentioned, it's mostly garbage, okay? It's kind of like the Black Little Mermaid. Just because racists hate it doesn't mean it's good. And you know I'm right, because every one of you has sat through one of those diversity training sessions and thought, this is some bullshit. And it's not just you. Over 900 studies have shown that DEI programs don't make the workplace better for minorities. In fact, it can actually make things worse because of the backlash effect. Remember DARE from school? Y'all remember DARE? Yeah. She said, woo. DEI training is like DARE for racism. And you all know how effective that was. I was sitting there going, oh shit, there's a ton of fun drugs I should try.
We have here Charlemagne the God saying DEI may be well-intentioned, maybe not very effective. There's a backlash effect. Although it's fun that racist right-wingers, are mad about it, doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely right. And quote unquote, he's saying racist right-wingers. I'm not calling right-wingers racist. But he is, right?
Pretty lame.
But it shows the dynamic of how even kind of these folks on the left are looking at DEI. And there's also, like, we're at this like peak moment for it where it just, everybody's kind of, like the left is now kind of allowed to be against it. Like that's what the Daily Show thing here is signaling to me, is like it's now like they're allowed to have this in kind of their cultural ethos. They can be like, oh, maybe it didn't work out, but our heart was in the right place, right? Like that's the way that they can look at it now.
Well-intentioned.
It's well-intentioned, right?
Is it well-intentioned?
It's a good question.
Does it matter if it's well-intentioned?
It causes me to wonder, is this just the moment where the branding of DEI kind of fades into the background, or maybe gets, turned into something new? They rebrand it. They bring in Frank Luntz, and he focus groups the global warming to climate change transition for DEI, and then it comes back in some new pernicious form.
New acronym.
Exactly.
Bigger, better, stronger.
or are people realizing, okay, like maybe this has gone a little far and it's not actually as like effective towards the goals we're actually trying to achieve?
I think that there's a very valid point in what he's saying. Is he says it's a backlash effect. It's blowback, right? The blowback exists more than just in foreign policy. Is when you start to push all this stuff, you start to get a bunch of people feeling resentful because now there's like special privileges for a certain class, and it's going to stir up more hatred of those people if it's like, yeah, but I'm also a white guy and I just can't get the same deals to get into college, right? Like that's going to cause more resentment and backlash than necessarily the well-intentioned of like, oh, we're going to help lift people up out of their situations, right? Like there's a cost benefit that exists there that can be quite dangerous, I would say.
I think there's an interesting incentive here that is present, and this is maybe a little more of my, edgy side, right? My conspiracy theorist side, David might say, that to me says there's an incentive for certain powers that be to divide people along racial lines so that they distract us from paying attention to the things that, would unite us against those powers that be. Paying attention to, the devaluation of our currency, for example, something that is negatively affecting all Americans, regardless of skin color or religion or any of those other, metrics by which you might want to divide people. So what do you guys think about that?
It actually makes me think of guys like Rabbi Shmuley on the Israel stuff, where I feel like every time he does something, it's just like, are you trying to make people hate Jews more? Like it feels like that. And it's similar with like the Rabbi Barclay on Candace Owens stuff. It's like when you watch that, you're like, this is, I feel like you're just stirring up more anti-Semitic like ideas here, because like you're just like playing into all the stereotypes. You're doing all this stuff. You're trying to like lecture people about being bad. It's just like, you're just going to make people angry. That's all you're doing here, right?
Yeah. Well, didn't you, it was about the Defense Department, I think, but isn't that kind of like the self-licking ice cream cone sort of thing? Like he plays into the stereotypes, get people to get more mad, more anti-Semitic, and then they're proving his point. Kind of like it's just
and then everything just becomes circular.
Yeah. The action is in the reaction. It's good trouble, right? That's a possible. I think a lot of this is. It could be that some of this is unconscious or unthought through as carefully as that, Joe. That they're like, oh, we need to separate people. I think it's more likely that they think they're probably looking at polling that suggests that there are white liberals who are starting to get a little bit anxious about this whole thing. And they're trying to reel that back in to not lose enough.
Well, and you have a lot of these
white liberals.
You have a lot of these disaffected lefties that are now like Trump supporters, right? Yeah. And that all started to begin in kind of the 2016 to 2020 area. Like you have a bunch of these people that in 2020 with large audiences and stuff, they're just kind of like, they're traditionally left-wing types, right? It's like the Joe Rogans of the world. Like, and they start to see everything happen, and then they're like, well, no, you guys have lost me.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm switching.
And it's that incentive that will probably create peak woke and then draw down and then make it less as a cultural force, right? And this is like a symbol of that, as a sign that could be happening. But it shows that it isn't as substantial as we would like, because he talks about DEI, but not ESG, which is the real culprit. DEI is just the symptom to the larger disease, which is ESG, which they're never going to talk about because there's no reason for them to hate that yet, because it doesn't affect their actual base the same way.
BlackRock's begun to drop ESG and things like that, though, too. So like the incentive structures, I think, are declining. And that is another point, though, is that there is also an outrage machine that exists of like a bunch of nonprofits that exist that make money and get donations and all these things, and they buy their houses with the money that's fueled off of outrage and continuing to fuel this.
BLM is an interesting example of that.
BLM is one of those. Speaking of Candace, she was one of the people that made a documentary about that, right? So I think that I think most of the average people that subscribe to these things, they're kind of just useful idiots towards the culture that exists within them. But there are people that lay out incentives and profit off of those incentives too. So like, I think that there's kind of like multiple variables in what you're asking here. Like, I think you're kind of both right on that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Well, I mean, I guess I wonder, like, what was the initial, because you kind of called out, like, was it truly well-intentioned, the whole DEI movement, or was there some other motive in creating it as an institution, as a cultural movement in the United States? So if we're questioning that, what was it? What do you think it was? And was it not in some way meant to, or by its very nature inclined to, divide people, from the get-go?
Well, I mean, I don't think... So the equity czars out there, the HR departments that invent DEI, the implication of the ESG to DEI connection, right? Where they're like, it's like two things that are plugging in to each other, probably don't care about the devaluation of the dollar or other kind of conflicts that we would unite around. I think that's a good observation, the effects of these things. It keeps us fighting about things like that without noticing big things, but I don't necessarily think that that's the intent. The intent is probably closer to the world is made better when we create equity so that no one feels disaffected and people can be bought into the workplace and feel like it gives them meaning and purpose to their lives.
Sure.
Right. So like there's making people feel included, right, in your workplace is tangibly better than not, right? It is probably the rationale of those people's motivations. So it's the pedestrian motivation that actually creates it. This is true for almost all negative phenomena, right? What do they call it? It's the pedestrian, or like the very simple, down to earth evils, the benign evils, the banality of those evils, right? That are just the common, just looking the other way at the right time, or just basically uncritically thinking, hey, wait a minute, if we make everything about equity, what does that mean for merit? Like, and just, I'm not going to think about merit practices because that would violate diversity or violate equity or might make someone not feel included, right? That sort of intellectual betrayal, self-betrayal, is where these things actually are decided on. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
So that's why it's like, there's nothing wrong with that thought other than like, it's just confusing effect with purpose.
Sure. Or intent. Yeah. An outcome may not be the intention.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, there is something wrong with the thought, is it just doesn't work. like the outcome, if the outcome doesn't work, it doesn't really matter how well intentioned the idea is. Like if equity becomes your primary value and it's like everything, like this is where it leads. Like we started with being hyper focused on equity back in the 60s when LBJ signed affirmative action into law with a executive order, and this is all the downstream effects that come out of it, right? Mm-hmm. And we continue to build and build and build on top of it, and eventually it comes to the point where you're just creating malinvestment, you're creating faulty hiring practices, and it just makes everybody less efficient, right? In the end,
right?
And if everything's going to be less efficient, that lowers our quality of life, and then that causes problems, right?
and cause resentment and all these other things too. If you feel like you're racially biased against in your HR department or the institutions around you are preaching at you, hey, stop being so racist, Joe. Stop it. When did you stop beating your wife? That sort of accusational tone, you might find yourself being like, oh, this actually creates more, it doesn't make anything better. It just makes everything worse, right? So that only a child thinks that all that matters is intent. But we got a lot of people in politics who that's all, that their whole thing is run on that. The purpose of rent control is the intent, not its effects.
Well, yeah, and just imagine like if we have companies over and over again all across the country where you have employees there's like, sorry, Bob, you can't get that raise because we've already hit our quota of how many white guys we can have on it. You're just like, well, what am I like? That's just going to spew more and more resentment, right? Like that's just like a very practical, like, no, you cannot have the raise this year because we've had too many white guys have the raise, despite us being like vastly majority white. Like, so like we have to equalize all that. So like, naturally you're putting like a price floor or a price ceiling on like how people can,
And so you have to think, okay, there's a feedback loop here, right? And it's not that long of a feedback loop to discover from intent that we're going to do this thing because we think it's the right thing to do, to realizing the effects of that thing is creating resentment amongst people, to then saying, oh, we're now realizing that the intention that we had, as good as it may have been, is not effective at accomplishing the ends that we want to achieve. We should correct course. So why aren't they? Is it a matter of having to double down on their view because it's something that they've committed so deeply to? Why aren't we correcting course?
It's a battleship.
It's just big and slow.
You're seeing the first turnings now, so it's going to take a long time before that thing gets turned, and then before you know it, it's just going to be a background thing that's just like a artifact of HR departments.
Well, and it's been institutionalized for 60 years, right? Like these things are embedded.
That's a complete repeal of diversity, equity, but like
that's what I'm saying.
Like
we've been seeing the effects of this for decades.
Yeah.
And just now, because the Daily Show said it's okay for white liberals to make fun of DEI, that now the battleship's starting to turn.
Well, and it's specifically DEI versus like equity, like these ideas in macro, right? I wouldn't say that, oh yeah, we don't care about equity anymore, right? Like that's not true.
Well, no, but this mechanism of trying to institute it, of trying to sort of make people change the way that they feel innately. I mean, that to me is the
governance
core
scores for ESG, right?
Sure, but I mean that's the core flaw in the logic.
But
that
DEI
you can
has been
force
around
anyone
longer
to
than
think
ESG
something that you
has.
don't want them to think.
Yeah, as an idea.
Yeah, but like kind of institutionalized, DEI has been around longer than ESG. ESG has only been around for like a couple decades. DEI has been around for like 6 decades.
Yeah, like to be clear, and just so we're not confusing listeners, ESG is the financialization of that. Part of that is governance, and governance in this case,
the S is social.
Social and governance is the how you run your corporation and how your corporation feeds into the social atmosphere and how it makes the world better using your corporation. DEI is then plugged into that. That's already a tool on the ground that you use to plug into that to say, oh, you have implemented a diversity, equity, inclusion program. Oh, look at that commercial. Here's a bunch of ESG funding, right? That's the core incentive for the spread of it and the ubiquity of it, of our current era, right? Yes, it existed prior to, but it's got, rocket fuel pulled onto it because of all the money. Mm-hmm. So that's my point, is like this has become like kind of the size it is because of that. And then it's because of more visibility, creates more resentment. They start to realize that their political coalition might be falling apart in some ways. So they're starting to turn, I think, against it in that sense, or at least undermining it as it's okay to talk about as a liberal.
Yeah, it is a thing where when you're a democracy, constantly bashing the majority population is probably not good for votes in the long term. But in the short term, spewing kind of like guilt and recognizing your privilege and kind of the slave morality across the masses, I think is very useful. But eventually the slaves kind of revolt. Right. And that's, I think, what we're seeing kind of culturally here is everybody was just like, yeah, I'm going to be very careful with my words because I don't want to be insensitive and I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But now everybody's just over it. Like there comes a point where people get over it. And that's just such a natural human psychological feeling.
Well, demonstrated is the Jordan Peterson clip, right? That compassion is killing us. So Jordan Peterson debated Destiny. Obviously, everyone knows who Jordan Peterson is. Destiny is a streamer who's a liberal. And they had a conversation.
Relevance is just tenuous at best.
Who knows? I don't know why people like him. I don't really see what he brings to the table, but
he's a good foil for Jordan Peterson. That's for sure.
How did I describe it last week? I said it was like watching a gerbil fight a blender. And it was
like a pit bull and a rag doll.
He represents, because in kind of like internet culture, similar to what we were saying with internet culture around conservatives last week, is you have all these figures. Like he is one of those figures on the left, right? You have like people like him, Hassan Piker, right? You kind of have like the Young Turks have quite a big like youthful internet audience. Sure. All these people, and he represents a very specific faction of internet youth on the left.
Like he's the neoliberal.
He's the neoliberal Democrat that represents, that kind of fights against the extremely kind of more socialist types of liberals.
Oh, so he's the least bad one.
Yeah, no, like to be honest, he probably is like the least bad one.
He was a Ron Paul kid.
Yeah,
Destiny?
He started as a libertarian. He grew up conservative.
Where did he go astray?
I read Ayn Rand, and then later on, he like totally butchers Ayn Rand's philosophy. He's like, "Did you though? Did you read it?
Did you really?
Sorry, buddy.
He's playing too much StarCraft back then."
Yeah, right.
Right. But I think that there was some compelling arguments about this. Is much more about environmental policies, but you see the same line of thought.
But it's that compassion through point and guilt through point.
Yeah, so here's Jordan Peterson.
Right now, we're like standing in traffic with our eyes closed saying the car hasn't hit me yet, so I don't think there's any coming. I think it's pretty undeniable at this point that there is an impact on climate across the planet. I think
that's highly deniable. We have no idea what the impact is from. We can't measure the warming of the oceans. We have terrible temperature records going back 100 years. This isn't data. This is guess. And there's something weird underneath it. There's something weird that isn't oriented well towards human beings underneath it. It has this guise of compassion. Oh, we're going to save the poor in the future. It's like that's what the bloody communists said. And they killed a lot of people doing it. And we're walking down that same road now with this insistence that, we're so compassionate that we care about the poor 100 years from now. And if we have to wipe out several 100 million of them now, well, that's a small price to pay for the future utopia. And we've heard that sort of thing before. And the alternative to that is to stop having global level elites plot out a utopian future or even an anti-dystopian future. And that's exactly what's happening now with organizations like the WEF. And if this wasn't immediately impacting the poor in a devastating manner, I wouldn't care about it that much, but it is. I watched over the course of the last 5 years the estimates of the number of people who were in serious danger of food privation rise from about 100 million to about 350 million. That's a major price to pay for progress on the climate front that's so narrow it can't even be measured.
I don't think that countries in Africa are being pushed away from fossil fuels. I think most developing
Of course they are. They can't even get loans from the World Bank to pursue fossil fuel development. And there's plenty of African leaders who are screeching at the top of their lungs about that because the elites in the West have decided that, well, it was okay for us to use fossil fuel so that we wouldn't have to starve to death and our children had some opportunities. But maybe the starving masses that are too large a load for the world anyways shouldn't have that opportunity. And that's direct policy from the UN, fostered by organizations like the WEF. They're going to have to turn to renewables. Yeah, well, good luck with that, because renewables have no energy density. Besides that, they're not renewable and they're not environmentally friendly. And then one more thing. There's one more weird thing underneath all of this.
Okay.
Well, let's say if carbon dioxide was actually your bugbear and it was genuine. Well, then why wouldn't the Greens, for example, in Africa, the progressives, be agitating to expand the use of nuclear energy? Especially because Germany has to import it anyways, especially because France has demonstrated that it's possible. We could drive down the cost of energy with low-cost nuclear, and there'd be no carbon production. And then the poor people would have something to eat because they'd have enough energy. And that isn't what's happening. And that's one of the things that makes me extremely skeptical of the entire narrative. It's like two things. The left will sacrifice the poor to save the planet. And the left will deindustrialize even at the nuclear level, despite the fact that it devastates the poor. And that's even worse, because if you devastate the poor and you force them into a short-term orientation, in any given country where starvation beckons, for example, they will cut down all the trees and they will kill down all the animals and they will destroy the ecosphere. And so even by the standards of the people who are pushing the carbon dioxide externality control, all the consequences of that doctrine appear to me to be devastating even by their own measurement principles. We're trying to fix the environment. Well, boys and girls, doesn't look like it's working. All you've managed to do is make energy 5 times as expensive and more polluting.
We can stop it there. Adam is so right that just put some music on there and I'm just hypnotized.
I know. I just couldn't stop watching it. And he's incredibly articulate. He's just so
like
good
his
at
cadence.
constructing
His cadence.
Always fire.
Also the suits. The suits.
Yeah.
keep me
Banger
going.
suits.
Yeah.
So I do want to note, and readers will recognize the environmental Kuznets curve in there. And the Coase theorem.
Go ahead and repeat what those mean for
Poor people don't
that
care
are new.
about the environment. As you get more wealthy, you will make the trade-off for less economic growth for environmental gains. That's what the environmental Kuznets curve is.
Because when you're poor, you don't care if you're polluting. You care if you're going to die of starvation or not.
Yeah. So if you keep them poor, make them poorer. That's the reflected.
Yep.
And that was what was interesting about this is just watching Jordan Peterson just smash him just turn him into paste, like over and over again. Every issue is just woof. But I'll treat him with a lot of dignity and respect. And I'm sure if I ever met the dude, I'd probably treat him the same way. But it's just frustrating. More so when did you guys watch him on Lex Friedman with Norm Finkelstein and like those?
I couldn't get through the debate.
It was hilarious
with Destiny on.
Destiny. It was Destiny, Finkelstein, and then two other like high level.
There was a 2-on-2
PhDs.
debate on Israel versus like Israel Palestine stuff.
Yeah, it was
incredible. Why is he being brought on these?
I don't
panels
know. He's on like
or
a
these
speaking tour. Or
yeah, but like,
kind.
but as what like role?
His interview with that guy is hilarious.
Oh, that's like old school. I think that's one of the things that really made him go viral originally. Was
yes,
that,
it is.
Well, I mean, he's a very popular like internet political commentator. Like I think a lot of people on the right like don't realize he exists or something. And he's just like popping up into the sphere.
Yeah.
Like I've known who Destiny was for like a decade, or since like 2015 probably.
I didn't watch him on StarCraft, so I don't know. I was a Day 9 guy.
Well, because he's always been the guy that like goes and debates people. But then he made a kind of a pivot outside of like the socialist paradigm. He had like a big falling out. He actually got banned from Twitch for comments on like transgender stuff. So like he's in an interesting area, but he has a large following. Right?
He's part of the non-intellectual dark web.
Good, the dork web.
The dork web.
Well, he got turned into paste by Jordan Peterson there, but that's exactly the point. Compassion can kill you. Guilt creates resentment. Resentment can kill you. So that's the through point, right?
Well, and also just these policies under the guise of compassion, they create a lot of malinvestment. Like he's talking about all these things, and you have the whole like, you know, if you describe it better, the
Kuznets curve.
Yeah, the Kuznets curve.
Yeah.
Right. You have those types of dynamics there, and it just creates a lot more problems than it actually helps. And it's like it's not useful. Like that's all it comes down to is the usefulness of it. What is the actual product on the end? It doesn't matter. You can moralize about it all you want, but is it actually better afterwards? It doesn't matter how like well-intentioned or how thoughtful it makes you or how much of a better person you are in the current framework of your moral framework of your current society. None of that really matters. Are people better off afterwards? That's all that matters.
Well, ask the people whose power was coming from that solar array that got absolutely destroyed by hail in, I think it was Texas.
Yeah.
Like a week or two ago.
That was a very crazy
They're not better off. And now there's a ton of waste that's going to enter, landfill somewhere. And that stuff you can't recycle solar panels. That doesn't happen. So I think it's intellectually dishonest for people to believe in this as a solution to a problem, and then see the ramifications of it and just sweep them under the rug and ignore them and say, oh, well, we're still right. There's just some negative externalities.
That's why the religion metaphor works so well for it, because it's all worth it for the future that we don't know, but we're very confident about. Right? We're very confident that this is going to happen. That it's an oncoming car. Yeah, exactly right. That the greater good of the situation, that the ends justify the means. And that's part of the problem too. It's not first principles thinking. It's the ends justify the means. Anytime you're doing that, beware. Be very, very careful about your moment.
Well, their first principles are that they're saving. Like I actually, it's not even necessarily purely utilitarian. Like they just have a different moral framework of what they're operating under, and they're making the logical conclusions. I think in that because they're where their axioms are. Their axioms are different places than us.
Well, no, I'm saying like the trade off for the poor is worth it because it will lose more lives of the poor. The first axiom is to save the poor, right? I'm saying they've kept that axiom. They're just saying we're going to get.
I don't think that's the first axiom.
No, let me say, I say they've tried to maintain that. They're in contradiction with it, but they've tried to maintain that by arguing, and I'm sure Destiny would have argued this if Jordan Peterson hadn't smashed him so thoroughly, which is that in the long run, it'll be better for them because global warming is a bigger threat than the short run of what they're facing right now today. Does that make sense?
Have you guys ever read Orwell's book, The Road to Wigan Pier?
Yes.
No. It's interesting because it's the dynamic of what this trying to get across in that book is it's Orwell. He has this interesting dynamic where he's kind of like socialist figure and then becomes very not happy with the way that the socialist left in England went. And so he wrote a book that the entire premise of the book is that it's the actual core axiom is not necessarily that these people really want to help the poor. It's actually that they just hate the rich. And it's entirely a resentment ideology. Like, so the actual idea, they'll mask things under compassion about like lifting up the poor, but in reality, what they really want to do is bring people down. And they want to equalize the playing field with that. And it's like every time when you see these types of dynamics here, you just see it. Like these people, they don't care about the poor. That's not the core of their belief. They will say that they do. They'll masquerade and build a religion and have like a mythos around it, but that's not actually what it is, right?
I think that's true.
So when the WEF said, or the World Bank or the IMF says, we give you that loan, but you're building these coal-fired power plants, so you're not going to get that. Is that motivated by resentment of the rich? I think that's motivated by the trade-off, right? We can't let you do that, because if you do that, then it's going to have environmental impacts, and in the long run, more people will die than otherwise. It's like
I think Mother Gaia is the central deity for a lot of these people.
I think that is one of the premises. Absolutely, I think it's one of them. It's like a holding up of that.
I think there's resentment of the rich and also Mother Gaia. Like these are different axioms.
And some things that are kind of coming out of that Mother Gaia that include like there's too much population. I think Jordan Peterson's right about that, like the antinatalism part of that. So here's a great one: the Irish potato famine. Did you know that a substantial amount of the deaths of the Irish potato famine were because the English wouldn't allow the importation of more food?
No.
Yes. And the reason why was because the intellectualization, the mainstreaming of Malthus and overpopulation theory. So the British Crown intentionally starved the Irish to reduce their populations because of concerns about overpopulation.
Because of theory.
And this is known. This is written. This is those people probably even would have been able to say, "Oh, I'm a liberal," right, at the time in the classical sense.
I knew there was a reason,
but they were so
the British.
But they're so committed to the science, the religious science of how certain it was that there was a fixed amount of goods and an increasing population. Therefore, we have to do this for their own good. For their greater good.
Beat you to it, Bennett. Wow.
Go yourself.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and people get very bogged down and they grab their theory and they just become very narrowly focused on that theory.
Right.
And anything outside of that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what evidence you bring forward. People don't operate off of evidence, really, for the most part. Most people they're not like purely rational beings. They belong to a tribe, right. And that tribe has a legend that gets pushed forward. They cast spells with whatever magic words are the words that they need to cast in order to get people to move.
Shibboleth.
Yeah. Equity. That's a spell, right? It might be anti-Semitism to get everybody freaking out about Israel. That's a spell, right? And then it gets the foot soldiers moving. It gets the useful idiots on board on whatever track that they need to do. You just set the incentives and you're laying out the railroad pieces for the train to start moving, right?
Well,
so and I'd like to put it there. You need interpretive layers, right? You need evidence itself doesn't help you understand how to navigate the world. You need a map, right? So just knowing which way the wind's blowing is evidence. Having a map allows you to get to where you want to go. So the interpretive layer sits on top of that. So you get evidence that contradicts that, your brain is going to immediately be like, I got to put this through this filter of my interpretive layer. And then if it contradicts that, I might just reject it.
Sure.
Right. That's cognitive dissonance.
It's like saying, do I agree or disagree with the justness of this war? Well, my filter says that I believe in non-aggression except for in self-defense. So is this war in self-defense? No. Okay, I disagree with this war.
Yeah. So that's
the map.
Right. And then it can get more complicated the more you know and the more you're navigating it, but you're still like bumping up against those interpretive lenses on the information that you get. Another part of that, that's why mental models is such a useful way to think, because rather than saying my identity is my ideas, it's just a model. I have this model. This is my baseline. I'm aware of my model. Just being aware of your interpretive lens is a huge thing, because a lot of people just never actually get to that point. They're completely unconscious to what their biases are and how they're interpreting the world. So just bringing that into the consciousness and saying, okay, here's my lens. Here's how I'm thinking about it. But let me know where I go wrong here. And then boom, 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 you go lay out a case. Mm-hmm. That's the difference between Destiny and Peterson, maybe on some level too, is that he is so familiar and intimately familiar with the information, his own model, his own way to think about it. He can argue both sides and bounce back and forth and say, well, here's the trade-off. What? I didn't even hear that one.
Something about
wicked smart.
That boy's wicked smart.
Well, and it's the same thing. Like when you're analyzing the news environment, just pay attention to the words that are used and drilled into your head constantly. Right? Like when we're talking about Ukraine, Russia, what is the thing that you always said? Like that's always said.
Unprovoked.
Unprovoked is a word.
Dictator.
Putin is a murderous thug dictator that kills his political opponents.
Return of the USSR.
Every single time you hear the same thing, and it's like, and therefore money laundering operation in Ukraine, right? Right? Or an interesting thing, and this might be a transition into the next topic. Is no, it's not about trans.
They don't have a lot of. They have a lot of those in Iran.
Because our next topic is
really? Yeah.
Huh. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Zesty Beverages. They're on a mission to unf the standard American diet by crafting drinks with fewer calories and more nutrients from real food. Their lineup of delicious offerings now includes Electric Peak Yerba Mate, postbiotic sodas, keto-friendly, ready-to-drink margaritas, and hard teas. Wondering what a postbiotic soda is? Well, head on over to zestybev.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Once again, check them out online at zestybev.com. That's zestybev.com.
Our next topic is talking about Israel and kind of the faltering support that seems to be happening across the board, like internally in America, but also just like internationally. Martyr Made, he had a tweet that I really liked this morning. It was how did it come about that Jews get their own special words for racism, anti-Semitism, or attacks, pogroms, accusations, blood libel, and war crimes, Holocaust? Like, you see, like we have a category here where it's like war crimes for everybody else, but for a particular group of people, we have a special word for it, Well, everyone else has to share the plain generic terms. From now on, if somebody makes an accusation against me, I demand you all refer to it as a lightning lie, no matter what, a death deception.
I know words. I have the best words.
Nice.
But like this is propaganda at work, is that you create these magic words that gets everybody into a mode, because it shuts your brain down and you no longer have to think. You're like, okay, my tribe says this, got the word, move.
The word is a pointer to a broader ecosystem of meaning.
Well, it's kind of like when you're driving, green light means go, red light means stop, and everybody's just kind of trained to agree with that.
And yellow light means put your foot on the accelerator.
Exactly. And that's actually, oh man, that's a good analogy.
What does yellow light mean?
Or does it mean slam on the brake?
Well, no, that's a good analogy because it's supposed to mean slam on the brake, but everybody speeds up. So it's like there's like a deception there.
Yeah, there's like a use, it's like intention versus its actual result.
It's kind of like saying they put a mythos about loving the poor, but it's actually about hating the rich.
Hating the poor is slamming on the brake. Excuse me. maybe a Freudian slam on the accelerator.
So this does remind me of the uniqueness that is argued in the Candace Owens versus the rabbi debate. Like it's a unique hate that's different than others and special, and that October 7th is especially bad, and that sort of argument, which is an argument people can make. I'm totally open to that.
But just understand what people are doing.
Right. And answering Martyr Maids directly, like there are things are called things uniquely sometimes when it's recognized collectively for whatever reason to be that way. Right. It doesn't have to, I don't think he's even trying to participate in he's participating in the terribleness of noticing and observation here. I don't think he's saying, therefore there's some big question, right? That's all centrally planned. It doesn't have to be that way, because there's a tremendous amount of shock that has defined the Jewish experience since World War II, right? As has been so clear by listening to Jewish people talk about it since October 7th, right? That this is like feels like another similar like group collective shock that they're going through. So compassion by, I think, Westerners have adopted that shock and have adopted like, well, I feel really bad for you. I feel really bad about the things you went to. And so I'm going to adopt your words for these things. I think that totally makes sense. So answering his question, how did it come about? Well, it seems like it came about because broadly compassionate Christian Westerners said, oh man, that's terrible. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I want to be on your side. Right. That seems to me how.
But then it becomes a very useful manipulation tactic, because victimhood is a very powerful tool, especially when you're in a society that really, really adores like a slave morality framework of bringing up the victims and kind of going against the aggressors, right? Like that is a very big moral framework and our entire ethos right here. And it's like that entire story is like, it's like the supreme tale for that. And then you have people that will use that because people are Machiavellian and they will use that in order to get whatever political means that they need to get, right?
Yep.
When you make that association that people are Machiavellian, can you like elaborate on kind of what that means more broadly? Like exemplify that?
I mean Machiavellian just in like in just politics is a blood sport, and it's not about altruistic means towards things, right? Like people are trying to vie for power to accomplish whatever they want and exert their will on the world. And right now, in this framework right here of what we're talking about, with Jewish people, Israeli kind of Zionist supporters, they are using that victim mentality or that victim narrative to be like, and this is why we have to kick all the Palestinians out. This is why we have to destroy their homes. This is why we have to do, this is why we have this special little place for us and we're a protected class. Nobody can touch us. We have special privileges.
Most moral military. Our military can't do anything wrong because it's the moral one.
Well, it's kind of like you have, you know, we're always being like white privileged because they're like they're the top dogs in society, right?
The patriarchy.
But what we really have right here is it's much more like go against the people that are the top dog, quote unquote, kind of frame them up. But then we have a bunch of groups of people that we're victims. So they have special privileges and we don't. So therefore we need special privileges, right? And it's like, but there's not really that much special privilege that is actually there. Like, is there kind of, because like we're a white society that exists, like, are there certain things that exist where you might, because like you look the same, so there's certain like social aspects that might be there? Sure, that's going to be very natural. But we actually are putting it into law and where we're putting funding and where we're allocating capital and all these things. And that's a much bigger privilege that exists there, right?
But I mean, it's when you say put in law, Kyle means that literally. We've banned anti-Semitic speech.
35 states have like anti-Semitic hate speech laws right now.
Which is an aberration to the American norm.
You have like states with like 500 Jewish people that have these laws put in place.
North Dakota. So to unpack Machiavelli a little bit further, Machiavelli is considered the first modern political thinker.
He wrote The Prince.
He wrote the book called Prince. He was a guy in Italy who, there was a new prince, and he writes letters to him, basically saying, this is why I should be your advisor and teacher. And he lays out kind of his theory of politics, partially drawing off of, you know, previous thinkers and reacting to, in a very amoralistic way, to Christendom and to the Enlightenment, to say, hey, there's all these people who want to moralize around you. That's not what politics is, because politics is about power. And it's about the acquisition and maintenance of that power. And here's all my wisdom I can share with you about that. And it's got really like very specific, like, hey, don't rely on too much of a militia, too big of a paid military, or mercenaries. You need to find like a balance here that works in this way. And it's very specific, but it's also very theoretical in scope. Talks about everything from that to like trade policy to a ton of stuff.
And then I believe Lorenzo Medici just dispensed with the letter.
But it became very famous because it is so hard nosed. I mean, like Henry Kissinger like takes it as like his manual for thinking about the world and global politics. Like
it's sort of like it's sort of like the 48 laws of power of the day, kind of, where it's like, here's all the, but actually the Prince is much more very specific and direct, specifically to like political figures. You are the prince of, where was Lorenzo the Great? Was it Venice? Florence? Yeah.
Florence.
Historian back here.
What?
Assassin's Creed, dude. Wicked.
Yeah. That's
I needed to know where you got that. You're like, oh, I know.
That's actually true. Yeah, Assassin's Creed 2 nailed this. They had it perfect.
Machiavelli was actually in the end of it too.
Yeah.
Spoiler.
And the Medici family and all that stuff was all in there. Yeah.
Anyways, going back to the Middle East in a different way. No, that's a different game.
Assassin's
Andrew
Creed
Schultz.
1.
Yeah, Assassin's Creed. Very good game. I played that one. So Israel support continues to falter as a bunch of stuff happened the last week on this. I think this is best illustrated by Andrew Schultz's comments on how the Daily Wire has handled the situation with Candace Owens and how they are working, how the whole thing is played out.
he makes the argument for censorship. He calls it something else.
Yeah, I forget the term. I have it in my phone.
But I don't even think he's using the term right. But he's basically like, there's a window of ideas we accept.
Yes.
And we accept ideas between this, I guess this is, if I get window, you're looking like this. So we accept ideas between here and here. And anything outside of that window, well, you're fireable. That's censorship. What? But he's acting as if this is like a justified reason for firing people when you built your identity and platform off of no censorship and freedom of speech and facts don't care about your feelings and all this shit.
It's also funny that window happens to end where his beliefs end.
Isn't
it interesting?
You would say that.
Not being pro-Israel, that's where the window ends. That's also your specific personal belief.
What?
So I just don't see.
So you can't have an opinion on your platform that is not pro a country that is not ours?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Crazy.
So is the Daily Wire an American media platform or is it an Israeli media platform? I'm just asking.
This guy's cooking.
I'm just asking.
If the rule is,
it's okay, guys,
I'm just saying, if the rule is you cannot be critical, because he has no problem being very critical of America.
Yep.
He's critical of the left in America. Left is half the country. You have no problem eviscerating half of the country.
That's the current party in power.
But you can't criticize Israel as a country. That's just another country, unless you're saying, and you're clearly admitting, that the Daily Wire is an arm of the Israeli, I guess, media or propaganda machine. Is that? Are you manipulating the religious right in America? Are you manipulating the right-wing conservatives in America and selling them country western movies and putting on your little cowboy hat and fake moving in Nashville so that you could take all their money and then in the process restricting free speech, one of the core tenets of the American identity? Ben.
Benjamin.
What is happening? There's trouble in paradise.
I plead the fifth.
Quote from Ben Shapiro on that. Yeah. Well, I mean, he's only asking questions.
Just noticing.
He's only asking questions.
You can't ask questions. Don't be noticing.
Well, but that is the thing, is now the American right, I think, is very much waking up to this. Like, you see any Ben Shapiro tweet now, and it is just ratioed to hell right now.
To those who aren't Twitter natives, what does that mean?
It's just you have people coming in and commenting on the post and then getting like way more engagement on that post underneath it, and it's usually something like bashing on him, and then you just have you flood through the comments on any of his tweets, and it's just like basically saying the types of things that Schultz here said, right? It's just it's not supportive of him right now.
I think technically too, a ratio is more comments than likes on a given post. Like a like would just assume, I agree with this or whatever. Move on.
Yeah, because usually a lot of people, they just like what they agree with, but then they freak out about the things that they comment on.
Right?
Exactly.
So
Comment that ends up
exactly.
Being, But and it seems like it. Like when I'm just looking at the landscape across the like right wing youth right now, they're not on board with everything going on right now. Like they're having the same type of attitude of just like the Daily Wire might be a propaganda machine for the Israeli military or something like that, right? Like that seems to be where the sentiment lies.
Even asking
it's like,
that question.
It's like the under 40-year-old types.
And that's the peculiar thing, is because in the absence of all of this, like the big void that is not being filled, is everyone's asking, why is it a litmus test to be a conservative to support the government of Israel, like the Likud party's
like specifically
policies in Gaza right now? Like, why is that a requirement?
Like
it's
it makes
very
sense
strange
to have different pillars of conservatism, but it's like, why is this a pillar?
Why? Wait. Right? Okay. Hey, I mean, if there is an argument, make the argument, Ben. Like his whole job is to justify his views in front of the public, and yet on these interviews, he continually doesn't do that. He avoids the issue. He talks around it. He attacks people around it for questioning why it is. But it doesn't seem to me, at least that I've been able to see so far, and I'm trying to track this, any amount of real justification of here's why you're no longer within the realms of respectable opinion if you disagree with the Likud party's actions since October 7th. Like that just doesn't seem, that doesn't make any sense. Like why is that the standard bearer?
That's a good question.
Well, when it would make sense, like I think there's a lot of things in kind of conservative realm that makes sense for being pillars or something. Like it'd be like, lower taxes, like general free market principles, pro-life, which even seems to be kind of declining as well within the American right. But you would actually expect that to probably be a higher pillar than this.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or I mean, like that was part of that debate that happened on Lauren Chen's live, right? Is that her name?
Yeah.
Was that question of like, hey, we welcome gay people into the movement when we're all anti-gay marriage 2 seconds ago. Mm-hmm. So why is it that, this is now like the red line that people shall not cross?
Well, and then you have all these people that came in and are like actively trying to like we mentioned that on that episode where you have like Dave Rubin calling up people's businesses and places of work being like, have you heard about what he thinks about Israel? Like that type of stuff.
Right.
Right.
It's a very, very strange action from a bunch of people who said, if the New York Times doesn't publish Tom Cotton's editorial, it's censorship. Right. Like these are the same people.
And all these people,
these
people rose to fame within like the conservative culture when like in regards to censorship and cancel culture on college campuses and stuff like that. Right. Well, Ben made his career off debating 19-year-olds on college campuses and, trying to bait them into canceling him and all that stuff. And now it's like, this is the pillar. This is the hill to die on. This is where the Overton window stops. And
he just has to justify why, right? It's his silence that makes it. If he had a case, then we could argue the case. We could say what's right, what's wrong about it. What's his great case? I mean, he's such a big brain. Let's do it. Let's hear it, please.
Well, what's not helping the case for them in general is humanitarian aid getting like bombed in Gaza. That's really hurting their ability to communicate why it is that what they're doing is right.
Right. So what happened was 7 died in an Israeli airstrike, drone airstrike, as they just delivered like 1,000 pounds of aid,
food. Right?
Food.
Yeah. This is the World Central Kitchen convoy that had communicated allegedly, from what I understand, to the IDF, I believe, and was saying
that was reported by the AP that they were in coordination with the IDF. It was reported by the Daily Mail. Israeli defense sources told Haaretz, which is a Israeli newspaper, that the aid workers' vehicles had been hit 3 times by missiles fired from a drone because of erroneous suspicions that a terrorist was traveling in the convoy.
Don't be suspicious. Don't be suspicious.
That's a new one. That's a new one. Strangely appropriate.
Very suspicious. Wow. I can't believe you made that funny. That was well done, sir. Okay.
I feel so guilty for laughing right now.
Yeah, right. That's the crazy thing about this is that this wasn't like, whoops, I pressed the wrong button. Right. This was
3 times.
These strike. They went
guided.
from one vehicle to another to get cover, and another strike on that vehicle, moving, away from that vehicle as it continued to coast, and then another strike to kind of finish them off. I mean, it's crazy that they could say, it could write in this article in the first reporting that it was because of, quote, erroneous suspicion that a terrorist was traveling. Who cares? If a terrorist was amongst them, wait until they get to their destination, which is probably within a green zone where they're traveling to, and detain that person or detain all 7 of them.
Sure.
Why would you drone strike them? It just doesn't, like, people, the more you pick at it, it just makes less and less sense.
Yeah.
And there was a report that came out today in an official investigation from the Israelis that suggested that that this is systematic. It's worse than it looks. And this is true. If you've been following, we haven't covered it as much just because it's so freaking depressing and there's not a lot we can do about it. But that there is a substantial amount of people, from reporters to hospital workers to other aid situations, that have happened in recent memory here in this war of Israel bombing them because, as they claim, it's nearby them. Now, the question is that a legitimate thing? Was the left hand not talking to the right? Like they called, person A and they didn't communicate with the drone team operating the area that these guys were moving through? If so, what's the purpose of coordinating with the IDF?
And if the person who they're communicating to isn't in charge of the drone team, then who is? Are they just operating autonomously, just dropping bombs on anybody that they see fit?
Well, we also had a British Army major saying that Israel had so much information on the aid convoy it blew up. They probably even knew the names of the people in the cars, and it's right after an MI6 chief condemned the strike.
It's so funny because you have articles literally celebrating the use of AI to better target people, coming out in the same week where this happens. Mm-hmm. And they're like, look how sophisticated, how moral our military is, how we only strike when we absolutely have to. And it's just like you have this enormous blunder that happens right on top of it. So it's just you which is it?
Yeah, it makes you have to wonder if you care at all.
And additionally, this have a lot of effects, right? The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk.
Yeah, that sounds
no joke. I'm not kidding.
Is that just Donald Trump in a disguise?
I'm in Poland now. It's the best Polish. Got the best brats.
They love me.
It says. The attack on the World Kitchen convoy and Netanyahu's reaction caused, quote, understandable anger. And this is a lot. I mean, this is a lot coming down. It's so much so that even Biden is now turning on Bibi.
He talks about it being like this one-off mistake. I'm outraged by it, but I would also like to remember that he is also just the largest recipient of AIPAC money of any American politician in history. I don't think the outrage is going to last that long.
and on top of that, they're still pushing for more aid for Israel, like as they're saying.
And they just sent more weapons. So
yeah,
his outrage also won't last very long because he won't remember that he was outraged.
Yeah. He probably didn't know it happened, much like Transvisibility Day.
He was like, I had a fire in my kitchen once. It was very similar to this.
Yeah, so like I just want to say,
but it's true. You know he would, Joe. You know he would.
So, outraged Joe Biden administration just also approved a transfer of 2,000 bombs, 25 F-35s to Israel. So he's super outraged.
Come on, man.
I'm sure not one of those bombs will be used inappropriately.
But there was additional reporting that's happened since then. And the question is just to what degree. There was a reporting on a phone call, right? And it's like the New York Times is like breathlessly reporting like Biden called him. He really stuck it to him. He's like, hey, pal.
Come on, man.
Come on, man. You can't be killing people.
Kyle,
and it's
sorry, I just put something in the doc. It's a TikTok. It's right under there. It's on the left side. This isn't the first time. I think this was Dave Smith talking about it, but it's a Wolf Blitzer clip. And it's like a spokesperson for Israel. And if we just play the clip, I think it's the right one. If it's not, I'll cut this whole part out. But
whatever happened to Wolf Blitzer?
CIA asset. Anderson Cooper was. I'm just assuming he was.
It's Anderson Cooper's dad right there.
Yes. Well,
look at the glasses. You can tell
Hillary Clinton's spokesperson.
So this is from 5 months ago. So it's clearly not the first time.
All right, let's see.
You know that there are a lot of refugees, a lot of innocent civilians, men, women, and children in that refugee camp as well, right?
This is the tragedy of war, Wolf. I mean, as you know, we've been saying for days, move south. Civilians are not involved with Hamas. Please move south.
I'm just trying to get a little bit more information. You knew there were civilians there. You knew there were refugees, all sorts of refugees, but you decided to still drop a bomb on that refugee camp attempting to kill the Hamas commander. By the way, was he killed?
I can't confirm yet. There'll be more updated. Yes, we know that he was killed.
Yikes.
About the civilians there, we're doing everything we can to minimize. I'll say it again. Sadly, they are hiding themselves within civilian population. And again, we are doing this stage by stage, and we're going to go after every one of these terrorists who was involved in that heinous attack on the 7th of October.
Well, they also can't move south. Like, that's also the issue here. It's like, you can just tell them to move south, but like the Egyptians won't take them. Like, they're stuck in this
that's such a stupid argument because
Gaza,
if they're simultaneously hiding within civilian populations and they're telling the civilians to move south, the terrorists are going to move south with the civilians, right? So there's always an excuse to bomb a civilian population if they're within it.
Drop bombs, and it's exactly what they did with the convoy. If they were like, oh well, we think a terrorist might have been there, and we're just going to kill everyone that's there anyways. Like, it's
unless the goal is what follows. Quote, shake the region to its core. Quote, the region will remember what we do for generations. Quote, human animals.
Whose quotes are these?
Israeli defense officials since October 7th.
Yeah.
Right. The amount of rage, the amount of like, this is our time to send a message that will never be forgotten, that we're going to intimidate them forever now into doing something. We're going to do something so horrendous that's going to intimidate them from ever attacking us again forever. That's their strategy, if you can call it one. Right. So if that's your strategy, and if you tell a Western media this, and anyone who's paying attention sees it and says like, well, this seems to layer up with I'm going to be very cavalier about civilian casualties because the civilian casualties are not an error at that point. It's part of your strategy.
Ethnic cleansing becomes part of the platform, right? Like that's part of embedded in the rhetoric that is often being used in Israel when it comes to this.
So like that's like a motivational question, right? So like, is the motivation, like as many liberal commentators have said, and I'm not sure I know this, I'm not sure I had come down strongly on this, but many liberals have said, and like the leftist progressives have said, this is an ethnic cleansing that they're trying to do. The UN has said this looks like genocide and is now investigating. They're not saying they haven't determined that it is, but they're saying it has the standing to be one with the technical definition of genocide, right? Not meaning just any amount mass killing, like a mass killing in order to end a people, and ethnic cleansing meaning that. So that does imply a motive to end it, right? And that's a much higher standard of evidence than I'm willing to go to. But at minimum, the strategy appears to be to cause maximum damage in order to forever intimidate these powers within Palestine, within Gaza, and probably the folks in the West Bank too, that to not mess with us ever again, because we will evoke this sort of retaliation, which would be indistinguishable from ethnic cleansing if you weren't being very careful with your words.
I just want to point out, we don't necessarily have to watch the video, but the head chef and the founder of the what was it called, the World
Kitchen,
the World Central Kitchen. Yes,
yep.
Yeah. He put a video talking about it, about the 7 aid workers that they had that got killed in the drone strike, and it's just worth pointing out again another example of these magic words. Ben Shapiro tweets out, World Central Kitchen does good work, but this is a blood libel. Just notice that word is popping up everywhere.
What does that mean?
Right? So the blood libels, there's a bunch of conspiracies that have existed since Roman times, where Christians were accusing Jews of like kidnapping Christians and doing like these blood sacrifices. May or may not be true. And
probably false.
But they've popped up.
To be clear.
But they've popped up all over across history. Like there was a big one. The one that Rabbi Barclay talked about in the Candace interview was talking about like in 1140 in England. Like they popped up all over these places. So like the blood libel it's accusations about blood sacrifices that. Like that's where the word comes, but gotcha. Now it's a unique word that mutates, and now it's just you're criticizing anything Israel does is a blood libel, right?
How it's supposed to be used, if I'm summarizing it fairly, which I'm trying to do, I'm trying to steelman Ben Shapiro. I'm trying to steelman it. So if what he's saying is that Jews are somehow innately desiring of killing people, right? That's the sense of what he's trying to use it, right?
Sure.
But I don't think that's what the guy is saying, right? That's just a very unfair way to categorize.
No, he said that there's a war against humanity that's happening.
Yeah.
Because they're doing humanitarian aid.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and additionally that people from all over the world were in this convoy.
There was an American, 3 British guys,
Polish guy,
like
etc.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So these people died, and young women at that. And you know, like his response is they do good work, but this is terrible and totally justified. Accusing Israel of targeting civilians. Well, they did target a civilian in this case,
Not
right?
just one.
Yeah. And hospitals for months on Twitter. Oh, because he did this before. Well, they did target hospitals on Twitter. Like we know this.
Yeah.
So like they did so because they thought that there were terrorists in there, but that doesn't justify it is the case. So what's the justification, Ben? Well, they don't have to, it just, it's obviously meant to just character assassinate. It's not meant to actually, honestly engage.
Yeah, so the original tweet here that Ben is quoting is from CBS News. Says, Chef Jose Andre said that the 7 aid workers killed by an Israeli airstrike were, quote, targeted deliberately. And he believes that the conflict in Gaza is, quote, not a war against terrorism anymore, and instead it is a, quote, war against humanity itself. Israel blamed the strike on, quote, misidentification.
Well, that gets to the core of it. You have a lot of people who are saying, is this unintentional, right? Like this was a miscommunication, misidentification, left hand taken on the right. And then you have the people are saying, like him, that it was intentional, specifically to prevent other aid organizations like them. Like they're shutting down their operations in this area now, right? They have to.
Yeah.
Is it to prevent them from being able to get aid to the Gazans?
Hard to know.
It's also a question on, similar to the DEI question, how much does the intentionality necessarily matter?
It doesn't matter when the
results are happening, right?
Yeah. Right. Well, additionally,
because like I feel like I exist on Twitter. I've seen a lot of dead Palestinians, and I've seen a lot of them getting gunned down by robot guns on walls. I've seen a lot of drone strikes. I've seen I feel like I've probably seen 5% of the population die, like in real, like on my Twitter feed. Like I'm exaggerating, but it's like a lot. And at a certain point, you got to be like maybe I'm falling for the propaganda. Maybe I am, but it's. At a certain point, you just got to be like, the intentionality of avoiding citizens, it doesn't really seem like there's a whole lot of intentionality in avoiding citizens.
Well, I'm going to return to this.
Like
there was a really great podcast with Jocko Willink actually talking to Martyr Made. And they talk about, the strategies that we used in Iraq that worked and didn't work in order to go into a heavily urbanized area and take care of a terrorist element within that area. And at no point in there does Jocko, his condemnation is resounding in it. And it's absolutely clear. His belief as a guy who was in charge of a Marine unit in Ramadi, in Fallujah, saying this is what worked and this is what didn't, that Israel's strategy here will not work and it will make things worse. And in the meantime, the human cost will be terrible, and they will lose the battle of ideas. So at a minimum, you're saying this is not a good strategy. At a maximum, you're saying that intentionally that you're doing this while claiming it's not intentional, actually intentionally doing these things because it actually fits the strategy of some of the major people who have spoken on behalf of the IDF to the West have said these things that I quoted earlier. That those sorts of things, like they line up too good and you're just going to lose this war and it's going to look even worse. So alongside that, Israel's also did an attack in Syria against the Iranian embassy, bombing it. The U.S., what basically broke afterwards is the U.S. braces, and I had to post this because, and we got to relate this in because it's so important to the what the question is for Americans, right? Because one thing is like, hey, this is Israel's thing and Israel's problem. To the degree that it was any other country, it was Azerbaijan and somebody else, I would probably be like, look, I mean, like I get it, but I can't really do anything about that, and it's way over there, and just find peace, get out, quit blowing each other up. But our support of Israel has direct consequences on the world stage that we cannot underestimate. And what we talked about earlier about Russia, China, and Iran getting together as a Axis powers versus us and Israel and the NATO and all that kind of stuff. Well, in the result of the strike in the Middle East in another country, not Israel. It wasn't a strike in Israel against Iranian forces. It wasn't a strike in the middle of the desert in Syria. It was the consulate of Iran in a city was bombed by Israel, who hasn't acknowledged the attack. But American intelligence, according to the New York Times, has assessed that Israel was responsible. Oh, sorry, according to the AP. Even better than the New York Times, quite a bit better. So in the title,
don't get me started on the New York Times.
The title is, quote, U.S. braces for retaliation after attack on Iranian consulate. We weren't involved, but we are bracing now because of that. Just think about it.
Because of our association with Israel.
Because of our funding with them.
Yeah.
Because of the unqualified support that we've given. Because our consistent work at the UN to keep any amount of third party, criticism
monitoring.
from happening. Yeah. So
So sometimes you got to wonder, is Israel a vassal state of the empire, or is the empire a vassal state of Israel? Sometimes you got to wonder on these things.
Well, and where's the line so much?
Yeah. It's just, it's interesting. Well, I know someone had sent me, I think it was Liam sent me a tweet from Alexander Dugin, who I've talked about on this podcast before, but he's kind of like Putin's right-hand man, so take this with a grain of salt. But
can't listen to him.
His analysis on this is
a puppet of Putin.
Israel attacked Iran in Syria, which is not Israel or Palestine. This is an act of aggression. Now Iran has no choice but to attack Israel. With all the forces of the resistance, this war will be started by the Shiites, but at some point it cannot but become a war of all Muslims. We must take into account timing. Biden does not want it at all, as his priority is the election and support for Ukraine against Russians, but Trump, on the other hand, does not care about Russians, but Israel is dear to him. Therefore, Tehran has every reason to start a war with Israel as soon as possible under Biden and before Trump. The U.S. and NATO will definitely get involved, but with great reluctance. In the meantime, Russians will take Kiev. I'm sorry, I fell for propaganda.
Oh, how could you?
It used to be Kiev,
I learned it that way.
How dare you?
And so in the meantime, Russians will take Kiev and strengthen dramatically anti-Western pole. That's where Trump will come in, or civil war will break out in the U.S., and the world will already be irreversibly multipolar.
So,
really
there's some stuff
perspective. So some of that is taken from a Russian lens,
right?
And everything.
And it's very much so. It thinks that a war will be over by November, which is just that's not how that works. But,
Sir, have you met the military-industrial complex?
But I get what you're saying. I don't think it's that bad of a lens, as far as especially thinking through carefully, what the Shiite-Sunni divide is on this, and how we are uniting Shia and Sunni in a lot of ways. The UAE is ending relationship with Israel. So we do all this work to bring them in on the Abrahamic Accords, and that's all gone now.
Yeah, that's fascinating, and actually I'm surprised by how little I felt like things were covered on that, because
I didn't even notice until you saw it in the notes.
I just seen like 2 people tweet about it, but UAE is pulling out diplomatic relationships because of the World Central Kitchen drone strike. So
it's wild. And that's probably just pretense for a lot of other things, but it does mean a Shiite-Sunni unification. And then if you get to the red heifers and the destruction of the Dome of the Rock, then that's all bets are off. We are in the end times, gentlemen.
Did we talk
it's over? It's destruction. We did it on the
we talked on the live stream.
On the live, okay. So let's go into that just a little bit, because we mentioned it once earlier in the show, and just for people that have stuck around with us, what's the context of the red heifers briefly?
Oh, just so there's a nonprofit NGO that has funded some Texas ranchers to breed these red heifers.
They're supposed to be unblemished.
Today, Junior. I don't know why that word's so hard to say. Red heifer. Yeah.
They're supposed to be unblemished. They're supposed to be sacrificed before the 3 years of age. There's this biblical prophecy and this verse back in Numbers and all this stuff.
But the temples were always made sacrosanct by them in their sacrifice. So they have to be slaughtered, burnt, and then they're used in the consecration of the building of a new temple.
But in order for that temple to be built, which is a Jewish temple, right? The existing temple, which is a Muslim temple, has to be destroyed.
Dome of the Rock.
Right.
So that's a point of contention. And we had mentioned on the live that part of at least the stated justification for October 7th was some contention around that issue. Is that correct?
A Hamas spokesman said in January that was one of a list of things.
Right.
Was the bringing of the red heifers to Israel,
and we know that Israeli policy around that mosque has been a major policy problem. We talked about it when it first came out.
Yep.
There's a faction of the radical right. Of the ultra-Orthodox in the Israeli government now under Bibi, I can't say his last name, that actually led a mob, street brawl the week before the attack, right? So there's a tremendous amount of obviously tensions that are rising specifically around this phenomena. And you have a group that anyone with the internet access can go on and say, and you see their mission statement says, we're going to build the third temple. And once you have that and they're doing stuff and they're moving cows around and they're spending money and raising money.
I think it's part of their flag too. I think it's symbolically in their flag.
Yeah. There's no small amount of, that's enough to make a lot of people act, especially if you're Muslim.
Well, yeah, a lot of this is religious warfare. And I mean, if you read the Bible, the entire history of the Jews up before Jesus was all about the getting to the temple and bringing the Ark of the Covenant and having everything situated in Jerusalem and all this stuff, right? Like this is a very deep part of not just Judaism, Muslim, Christianity. It's a deep part of the whole Abrahamic trilogy of religions is everything that has to do with this temple in Jerusalem. Right?
And then we have an eclipse and we have locusts.
Yeah. And we have CERN.
Yeah. This is where things start getting off the rails. It's the end times, I had people sending me news articles about there's these locusts that they're doubling their birth rate right now. And it's all happening right in the line where the eclipse is going through. And there's CERN may or may not be summoning interdimensional demons. Things are getting wild out here, guys.
And then we got Nibiru, guys. Yeah.
What?
No, we'll get into it. We'll get into it later.
Nibiru?
Planet X.
There's a syzygy happening, and the planets are aligning.
Yes, during the eclipse, right?
Yeah.
What? Come on.
Yeah, no, that's a thing.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's also part of this.
All the planets are going to be aligned.
That's where things start getting weird, and that's where David's you've lost me.
No, I just didn't know about that.
What we're yelling about?
It just seems like it's
syzygy
too much.
Means planetary alignment. That's what it means.
Oh, okay.
I noticed Sam mentioned that in the chat in the live last night, and I was like, "The hell is that?" So now we know.
It's and I believe I think it's all supposed to be happening Monday or something. I forget which.
It's on the 7th or 8th, which I think is
will this podcast be out by the time we get by the time the world ends?
If you're watching this, either the podcast has come out on Saturday and we didn't get a copyright strike from the clip we played from Comedy Central, or maybe the planet.
Wait a minute, not
exploded.
the planets. 4 planets will align at the same side of as the sun as Earth, including Venus, Mars, Saturn, and Neptune. On April 4th.
Tight. Oh, wait, that was yesterday.
Everything
I'm seeing is April 8th.
This is according to NASA.
Well, they're liars anyways.
Oh, that's a good point. They're a government plant.
Yeah. Do you know what NASA means in Hebrew? Deception.
No. But April 8th is... What? I totally missed that. Well, you just messing with it?
I heard that somewhere. Let me check and see if it's true.
No, that's probably false. Okay, so causing a...
okay, so
on April 8th, there's the
I think the article you saw written was April 4th or something. Everything I'm saying is April 8th.
No, on April 4th, 4 planets will align, right? On April 8th, it'll be the moon, sun, and Earth.
That was yesterday.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's happening.
That's just the start of the clock down.
God doesn't care about our time, Dave.
Are we in the end times, guys?
One day.
If the end time starts, is it going to happen because of American eclipse or because of something in the Middle East? That would be a lot more freaky.
But everything would come from the West, as they said in Revelation. There's a whole thing about the monster coming from the West. Yeah.
So is that us? Are we the monster?
Are we the monster? Is America the monster? I don't know. I'm kind of memeing on this, but what kind of does matter in this is that people are actually acting on things when it comes to this. So it doesn't matter if you believe or don't believe this. There are people that are conducting actions that are moving things. And as like we said earlier in the podcast, it seems like a lot of pieces are coming together for much wider scale global conflict right now. Is that revelation? I don't know. But there's people are acting. And there is kind of an aspect of it's almost like people are people's will is exerting prophecy into existence in a sense too. There's people that are trying to make it happen too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is a part of Zionist thought. In the late 1800s, this was a part of trying to this is the dispensationalist Christian theology is coming forward and bringing about the second coming of Jesus, from the Christian Zionist perspective and stuff like that. Right. Because everything has to come into Israel and the war has to come around it. That's part of the scripture. So
yeah. Well, we're not going to go back down that rabbit hole because we followed that rabbit trail for 2 hours on the live. So if you want to check that out, lots of interesting things
You
about.
didn't say anything about brains. What are you talking about?
Stuff.
Well,
brains.
That conversation
I'm
was
kidding.
specifically why I added the I don't know what we're yelling about.
So and
Same, dude.
Leslie, do you want to talk about your pre-programming
My pre-programming of what?
of nuclear war?
Oh.
So wait a minute. To be clear, to wrap up on that thing, the eclipse is just a solar eclipse, and it's probably not the end times. That's my prediction. I'm going out on a limb.
Okay, but
$1 on the planet table.
$1 down. So $1 down that the eclipse will not bring the end of the world.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. But like, I'm just saying, if I'm going to take that bet, like that dollar is going to be worthless because it's the end times.
Oh, good
right?
point. One Satoshi.
Well, that's remarkably less than $1, I would say.
Yeah.
At least for now.
That's 100 millionth of a Bitcoin.
Oh, well, so why are government agencies telling people to like prepare with extra food and water and like gas and like communication devices for an eclipse? Like we've had eclipses before, like you said, these happen relatively frequently.
Yeah,
every few
2017
years.
was like the last big one. That
Yeah, I mean,
Trump looked at it.
Is this so they're warning people like in the shadow area, which kind of arcs through the Midwest and into like Ohio River Valley through the Northeast,
which is where the locusts are supposed to be coming.
Naturally, right, very near the New Madrid fault line as well, which is just a different thing.
Well, but that's where the blood is going to fall from the sky.
Oh, is that right?
That's
okay. I thought that's where the Earth splits in two, and then Satan comes out because CERN opened up a portal
from Switzerland.
That
makes sense. That's
well,
all makes sense.
It's all one planet.
HARP is part of it as well. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, don't believe everything you read, kids.
Let me pull.
Definitely believe everything we say.
Yeah, definitely. I did find a source for 7 planets and a comet will be visible coinciding with the solar eclipse on April 8th.
And a comet. That's Nibiru.
It's from Astro Adventure.
They're trying to scam you and tell you it's a comet, but it's Planet X. Listen to me. I know.
It's Planet X.
I'm freaking out, man.
I'm so fucking scared right now.
Yeah, but that's all I'm saying is that the internet is freaking out about that. I don't know. It would require probably some research. I wouldn't be surprised. Let me go on a limb and just guess. Just because you asked and something I don't know the answer to.
Lay it on me.
Which is that you would probably take regular announcements of the CDC that might be there, right? Regular announcements. Does that make sense? Like,
since when do we believe the CDC?
Yeah, and why are they?
No, I'm saying
would it be like FEMA
or FEMA, right, or whatever of an agency who has that, and they have a regular promotion budget. They probably get allocated a couple $1 million by the federal government every year to put out basic common sense in emergency type stuff.
But
and then
why
someone
is an eclipse an emergency?
It isn't. Someone sees that and associates it with that. When if they say the eclipse is coming, that's one thing. But is that what they are saying, or is that an interpretive layer? I would guess it was likely a selection bias because people saw two things happening at once and then associated them.
I think this was
and that someone
deliberate.
was Joe.
Well, no, I wouldn't be surprised if someone reported it that it was connected. But that doesn't mean that was the intent of the agency.
I do think that it was directly correlated to the areas surrounding the path of the eclipse, and this will be my steel man of why that might be, because a lot of people are going to be flocking to these areas to see the eclipse. Therefore, there might be additional undue strain on resources, difficulty traveling because of lots of extra cars on the road. Sure. Lots of cell phones in a given area, so difficulties to communicate.
If power goes out.
I don't know about the power part.
So I just found an image that I think is going to solve all this right here.
Yes.
So somebody made a map of the 2017 eclipse, and then they're putting it where the April 8th, the 2024 eclipse, and they're putting the cross section, and that's where the locusts are coming.
But it's also directly over that fault line I was talking about.
And it's right over the New Madrid fault.
And today the Mississippi River is drying up all along the New Madrid fault.
On April 8th, we'll prove you wrong, David.
I'll take your bet.
I hope you're right.
I'll do a side bet.
More interesting.
I'm sorry for everybody in the Midwest who's going to experience locusts and earthquakes.
Dude, if anyone's going to die in a terrible cataclysm, it's going to be us. We had the caldera right there.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know.
This is way more
that's
likely
a different cataclysm
than the moon causing an earthquake.
The moon?
But the
moon got to do with
but
this.
the moon
That's
causes
what eclipses are, Joe. It's like what does the moon even have to do
with an earthquake? The moon has something to do with the eclipse, not the earthquake.
I know, but like, how does the eclipse cause the earthquake?
Gravitational pull.
That totally makes sense, yeah, because when the moon has the same gravitational pull when it's on the other side of the sun?
It's Nibiru is going to cause the earthquake.
Planet
Who's
X.
Nibiru again?
Nibiru, otherwise known as Planet X.
Is this a friend of yours? Is Nibiru, are they in the room, Joe? Are they amongst us?
I'll send you some sources, Dave.
No, I know about 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, none about the actual theory.
Yeah, there's a theory. It's a very far-fetched theory that there's a planet that's on just an enormous orbit, and it comes into like Earth's orbit or proximate to it, and it's highly magnetic, and it causes all these pole shift things to occur. And interestingly, like its orbit, I suppose is supposed to be like aligned with that the Younger Dryas impact theory and some of those other like the cataclysmic tales that
There's
say
also a lot of Sumerian mythology that's associated with it all too, and how some of our theories about how the moon was created with a collision that had happened, like a lot of like the Earth Moon dynamic happened with like a planetary collision long time ago, and there's like, and a lot of people associate it with Sumerian myths of like Marduk and Bahamut.
But I mean, so yeah, there's this spiritual religious piece of it, but then there's also like the sort of like astral part of it where it's like this is a planet of sorts, but it's like dark, or it's only visible from like deep in the southern hemisphere, like Antarctica area.
Was once in our
so
solar
we can't
system.
see it approaching is the thing. Like why wouldn't you see it in the sky? We can't see it in the sky. Well, it's coming from an odd angle that we couldn't see approach, and so I don't know. There's some.
Well, it's because part of it is it goes down to what I was saying with like the moon, with this collision and everything that happened with like the creation of the moon is a theory that some physicists put out. Like it's not the only theory, but there's a bunch of theories about that.
And
and it's because there was the way that the orbits of two different planets were in our solar system. It's like eventually they collided. Like it took forever, and eventually they collided, and then it knocked a bunch of things off course. And then that ended up resulting in like how the Earth and the moon is situated. And then you have this 10th planet that went like shooting out, but then it like eventually comes back around.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I mean, it doesn't even need to, allegedly, it doesn't even need to collide to cause like impacts on the Earth with like electromagnetism and all that stuff. So that's the broad strokes. But
there are physicists that talk about this. Like it's not like this like super wacky far out there thing.
I'm open to it.
So some people talk to aliens to know about it. Some spiritual.
Well, that's how they
get.
That's how they like hop off the planet while they're coming by. Like they just kind of pop over.
Boop. Yeah, it's like a commuter flight.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes down to...
I don't want to miss my connection to Planet X.
The people that go down the rabbit holes of like the Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, Younger Dryas impact theory hypothesis, pre-Göbekli Tepe, structures, those types of stuff. A lot of people kind of go down that rabbit hole and see that it laid out in a lot of those like really, really ancient mythos. Because it's like that story maybe got passed down a little bit or something.
You say physicists talk about this, and it's not far-fetched. I think it is. And I think that there's an interesting correlation between how guys like Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock have been very blackballed by the scientific community about asking questions about some of these interesting historical events, in geologic time, these cataclysms that have occurred. The scientific establishment doesn't seem to want them to question the narratives that we currently believe to be
that's
true.
Definitely true.
So what are the correlations there?
Younger Dryas, like impact theory, is a very you're not allowed to talk about it until it's become fairly popularized in recent years, and and now it looks like an impact that happened in Greenland is probably the thing that basically kicked off the mass flooding events that 12,800 years ago, that type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But because we had very institutionalized our views on archaeology and our ancient history, we had like legends and stories put in place about how we viewed all those things, and any questioning that kind of derailed those because it's like civilization started 6,000 years ago. There was nothing that happened before that, right? But as we dig deeper, it seems like that's not the case. And we're now coming up with places like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey that are 12,000 years old. And we're getting all these, and we have like infrared scans of megalithic sites that we haven't even dug up yet, where it's like they might be even older maybe. There's a lot of questions about Egypt and the Sphinx and the pyramids and things like that, where these things might be left over and held over. And we see that with geology, with water erosion, and all of these things were like taboo subjects that we weren't allowed to talk about because they were in our elementary school books about how the Jewish slaves built the pyramids. And you're like, right? But it's like those stories aren't actually true. Those are like art appreciation stories of the history that we don't actually know, right?
Yeah.
I was shaking my head because there's a bunch of stuff about how lightning struck the Statue of Liberty and now an earthquake hit New Jersey.
God is angry.
Yeah, that's what it is. And then I looked it up, and apparently it gets struck by lightning all the time. So it's probably not.
Well, it's a lightning rod. It's a lightning rod. It's a big lightning rod.
But this
she's holding it up.
Two things happened, and people be like, causation. Just post hoc ergo propter hoc. Beware.
But that has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
I'm not talking about that. Well, I'm talking about this. I'm not talking about what you're talking about. I'm very open to the Graham Hancock hypothesis. Whether or not. What's your friend's name again?
The real
Nibiru.
The real
is coming, and the
real
locusts are attacking.
I think the real lesson in this, though, actually, is that there's a lot of stories and beliefs that we have about how humans have been in the past that are actual guesses, and they are embedded into how we learn about humans over history.
You don't even need the past. Who are the robber barons?
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we call them robber barons? Who wrote about them? Do you know anything about who wrote about them? No. You know they're called yellow journalists. Why were they called yellow journalists? Why was that?
Well, and it's also a useful framework of mind. It's also a useful framework of mind here of thinking on how, like, think about all the lies and deception that we're seeing with our media landscape right now, and then just apply that to history. Like, history is just filled with half-truths and fraudulent understandings of things, and we kind of just like make up stories as we're going along. And a lot of these things could or could not be true. Right? It's
right. And so there's two sides to that I do want to note, because it is our mission to help people cut through the media misdirection and resist the modern narrative, right?
Nailed it.
So that idea, and one of the reasons why I circle that around as our mission, not just say to tell you the news, right? Or to say to give you our opinion, is what we're trying to do is strike that very delicate balance between the absolute relativism of you can draw any line to conspiracy theorizing kind of stuff where you're just saying, well, two things happened. Maybe just asking questions, and a firm standard of what is evidence and how should we construct this and how closely or farther away should we hold this, and not being subjected to a group mindset or a group think or a conventional wisdom trap, but instead to be able to be free thinking and individuals who are capable of rejecting the things that as it's laid out. And that's the real metaphor for the red pill, right? In the Matrix, is that you're told society has to be this one way, and the robber barons stole all the money from all the people, and they were terrible human beings, and yada yada yada.
They're robbers,
as defined by a bunch of socialist progressives, children of priestly reformers from the last century.
Well, and he who wins the narrative battle wins history,
and that's constantly being done.
These
now.
are fights over history,
right? It's fights in history, and history is constantly being written. It's being written at CNN and the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. So that's why we cover the weekly news, because that's what's going to define the future, right?
And now we're writing our own version of history.
That's
right here on this show.
And we'll keep sharing and liking, and maybe we will.
That's right. Well, great episode, guys. For David Rand, Kyle Mack, Bennett on the buttons, and myself, Joe Sheehan. Thanks for watching, everybody. We will see you in the next one. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Help us fight internet censorship by liking, commenting, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with your friends. To find us around the internet, visit linktree.com/humanreactionpod. And remember, the moon?
But the
moon got to do with this.
But the moon causes
That's what our jobs are, Joe.